Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from Throwaway and Gaslit. And you may have seen parts of this story in other places before. There's a new update to it, so if you want to skip certain parts of the story, please feel free to do so. Timestamps are always down in the description and along the timeline below. And a quick couple of trigger warnings: there is talk of sexual assault within the story and talk of cancer as well. So as always, timestamps are below. The story is titled, "My 33 female husband, 36 male, may have cheated on me with my dead best friend and had an affair baby." Throwaway for safety. I don't even know where to start. The past 6 months have been an absolute clusterfuck, and it only seems to be getting worse. My best friend since elementary school, who I'll call Alice, passed away in February from cancer. She had a 2-year-old daughter who went into the custody of her mum after she passed away, who I'll call Alexis. Last month, Alexis showed up on our doorstep unannounced, telling my husband he needs to take responsibility for his child and either take custody or start finally paying child support. She says that Alice had told her when her daughter was born who the father was, but didn't want anything to do with him. To answer the inevitable, Alice was a traveling nurse and made a lot of money, which is the only reason I can think of for why she didn't go for child support. During this conversation, my husband had the worst panic attack he's ever had, so we had to end the conversation before I could get more details. My husband's story is, I don't even know. He said that Alice's daughter is probably his, but that it isn't what I think. Almost 3 years ago, we threw a large housewarming party, as we'd just moved into our dream home, after I finished my residency and was set to make real money for once. Alice was in town and set to be at the party, but I was called into work before she got there. I didn't get back till after 3 AM. Party was winding down. My husband was passed out upstairs and Alice had already left the party, which at the time I did find strange as we hadn't seen each other in months. My husband claims he woke up in the middle of the night to Alice on top of him, but he passed out again before he could say anything. He claims he never told me because he was worried I wouldn't believe him, which I don't know if I do. He showed me some texts he sent his best friend the next day asking for advice about him thinking someone raped him, but if he cheated, he could have had that conversation as evidence, especially since he never said Alice specifically. Ever since the party, he has been very distant with Alice, and after she had her daughter, he would even find excuses not to be around the house when she would visit at all. I don't know if that's because he cheated or if Alice did actually rape him and that was his trauma response. I've known Alice since we were children, and she had never come across as that kind of person. But I've also known my husband for over a decade, and he's not once ever given the inclination of a cheater. He's an attractive guy, and I've seen the looks he gets at the gym, and he's never even given more than a glance. What the hell should I do? How do I figure out what the truth is here, when Alice isn't even around to defend herself? She never implied she liked my husband, let alone want to sleep with him. I told my husband he needs to get a DNA test done before anything is decided on the child's part. But in the meantime, he needs to move out while I think about what I'm going to do here. Commenter says, did Alice change her behavior after that night? Anything at all? Opie says, not that I noticed. She's always been a little standoffish towards him as she thought I could do better. The first time she visited after she gave birth, she asked where he was since he wasn't home for the first time, but she never asked again after that. Someone says, obviously DNA test. His story does sound wild, but he wouldn't be the first. Is he someone who tends to drink a lot at times / black out? Opie says not at all. He rarely drinks and generally only at parties, which at our ages are few and far between. He works a tough and stressful job, so I figured once he was buzzed, he lay down and fell asleep. Not that he had drunk more than normal or anything like that. Someone says, I don't know you or your marriage, but I think I'll be inclined to believe and support my husband with a few details you've given. Commenter says, last thing, do you think she'd take to the grave that she had an affair or she raped your husband? Opie says, I hadn't thought about that actually, thank you. That's a good point. She always thought I could do better than him, so if it wasn't a affair, you'd think she'd have told me on her deathbed at least. Someone says, you say you don't think she would have been the type of person to rape your husband. But would she be the type of person to sleep with her best friend's husband consensually? As for your husband, the text to his friend would have been deliberately shitty to send with the purpose to save his ass, just in case you found out they slept together consensually. Is your husband the conniving type? Either way, I'm sorry you're going through this. So OP quotes that first part of the comment saying, would she be the type of person to sleep with her best friend's husband consensually, and says, I don't know. And that's part of the problem, I guess. I went through everything with her, so to reconcile the woman I knew for most of my life with someone that would betray me in either way is so hard. OP quotes again saying about the text message that he sent and is he the conniving type? OP says he's smart. Smarter than I am, which, not to sound conceited, means he is really, really smart. He does think tank type work as a contractor, so planning things is literally his job. If he ever thought he could get caught for cheating, I think he'd be smart enough to cover his tracks. And then quote saying, I'm sorry you're going through this, and OP says, thank you. I appreciate it. Someone says, who did Alice say was the father of the baby? I was spending the night at my best friend's house once. The husband, a friend of my ex's, came home late, tried to get in bed with me. I fought him off and told him to get out. I didn't tell my friend until after they were divorced. I believe your husband. OP says she told me it was a man she met while in another state for work. Short-term fling. Someone questions, and was downvoted by the way, said he went to bed while there were people in the house / a party going on. OP says, I know it seems odd, but everyone at the party were friends or family. The types of people we'd trust to house sit if need be. So him sleeping while the party winds down wasn't weird at the time. Someone says, why does he need to move out? Your friend raped him, and he even texts his friend the next day. It's possible he didn't even realize it was your friend. You also only have her mum saying it's his child. Your horrible friend did this. You should be supporting your husband. OP responded, which again was downvoted. It said, I needed space to think. It's only temporary for a few days at most. I've been trying to think on this for the past 2 weeks, but it's impossible to do when he's here, as all I can see when I look at him is my best friend. Dealing with her death the first time was hard enough, adding in the new feelings of betrayal, if it was an affair, or betrayal and disgust, if it was rape, I'm making it even harder. How am I supposed to work through that, and also figure out if I believe my husband when those emotions are clouding my judgment? OP responds to another series of questions. Question said, how did his friend respond to your husband's text? OP said he asked for more details, but my husband didn't give any. Next question said, and how did your husband react to Alice's death initially? Did his response seem normal, or like what you would have expected? OP said, I honestly don't know. I was going through a lot at the time, understandably. I didn't notice any changes in him. Person says, honestly, I'd be inclined to believe your husband. Sending the text preemptively to cover his cheating seems like a stretch, and it makes more sense that they are genuine. I feel like faking everything else just implies an excessive level of manipulation, and it sounds like you don't have a reason to believe that he'd do that. Also, him not telling you because he thought you wouldn't believe him sounds like it might not be an entirely incorrect judgment at this point. OP says, I'm starting to feel that way too, and I think I might be a terrible wife. And the final commenter says, women go decades without admitting when they are raped because of fear of people not believing them. I'm going to be honest, men will go twice as long and preferably take it to the grave because almost always and automatically told it's not even possible for a man to be raped. I know you have to go on instinct, but his story makes sense with the text he sent his friend. We'd also hope to never be around the women he is sure raped him again, which is why he made himself scarce after the fact. If he's a smart man like you claim, he would not have wanted you alone with Alice basically ever because she could reveal an affair. He would have tried to separate your bond. Instead, he hid because she couldn't really say she raped him. You say she wasn't a fan of his at all. She thought you could do better. So why wouldn't she spin it as he came onto her? It's because she was the one in the wrong. OP says thank you. I don't know what it is about this part, but it just clicks with me. You're absolutely right. With her level of disdain, if it was an affair, she certainly would have told me, if only to separate us, especially on her deathbed. I was in the room with her, holding one of her hands. She obviously took this to her grave, and the only reason she would do this is if she raped him. Thank you. OP edited that same post and said, after talking with you, I've come to the realization that my husband is being truthful. My best friend raped him. Several people pointed out that with Alice not liking my husband, if it was an affair, she would have told me when she was dying, if only to separate us. You're absolutely right. I was there in the room while she passed. I held her hands for days. We talked about so much. If it was just an affair, she would have told me. But if she raped my husband, she wouldn't have said a word. That's the type of horrible thing people take to the grave. I've also come to the realization that I made a terrible mistake asking my husband to leave for a few days while I gather my thoughts. Not to make excuses, but losing my best friend to cancer, a long cancer fight at that, was brutal. To say that I was devastated wouldn't do it justice. That it happened only 6 months ago. I'm still feeling it every day. So to have this thrown on me, it's like I'm losing her all over again. Either she betrayed me and fucked my husband, or she betrayed me and raped my husband. Not only have I lost her, but now I've lost the good memories, an entire lifetime's worth. It was impossible for me to look at him and not also see her, and be struck with the horror and realization of that loss all over again. I felt I needed to be able to break down, grieve, without the fresh wave of loss I got every time I saw him. It was wrong of me to ask him to leave. You're right though, and as a few minutes ago, I righted this wrong. I called my husband, I apologized, told him I believed him, and begged him to come home. He'd be here in half an hour at most, and I'm going to support my husband the way I know he would have supported me. I've been off and on Reddit for several years, and sometimes the advice given on subreddits like these can be a bit hit or miss, but today you guys did good. You helped me realize not only that I was wrong, and being stupid at that, but that I was hurting the person that needed me the most. I was selfish. I have no idea what we're going to do as far as a potential daughter is concerned, but I can assure you we'll deal with it together. It's going to take a lot of time and probably a lot of therapy to grieve this new loss. I feel numb now, as though I'll never cry again. My best friend raped my husband, which means she was no friend of mine. She flaunted it, coming to my house, sitting with me and gabbing. She brought a child here, trying to rub it in his face right in front of me. She tortured the man I loved, and I was an unknowing party to it. I feel sick to my stomach over how many times she came over, just to hold it over him. I'm honestly at a loss on how to make it up to him. If you all have any ideas, please feel free to give them to me. I think I'll need all the help I can get. Tomorrow, I'm going to take a leave of absence from work, just until we can figure out our next steps and we can get our heads straight. Thank you everyone. And roughly 8 months after all that happened, OP returned with an update and said, I've received a lot of messages asking for an update, so I've decided to finally sit down and write one out. As you can imagine, after the clusterfuck that was thrust upon us, this update isn't likely to answer any of your questions, only present a few more. I want to start by telling you all that I love and trust my husband. My reaction to asking for space to think, in retrospect, was wrong, but at the time I didn't know what to think. It was a combination of losing my best friend again and also the fear that I was losing my husband. That sent me spiraling. Again, it was a mistake to ask him to leave, and I did rectify that in the end. Now, for the update. As mentioned in the original post, I did take a leave of absence from work and we spent a long time just being together. Talking, reaffirming our love for one another, and figuring out what to do next. We of course spoke with a lawyer. My husband was very adamant about not having anything to do with the child, but was willing to offer financial support as needed. So we agreed to do a DNA test immediately to prove paternity, and go from there. Didn't know you could buy tests on Amazon, but with only a few weeks processing, it was the easiest path forward since Alexis lives hours away. To everyone's surprise, Alice's daughter is not my husband's. We ended up testing twice, both very, very definitive. The first test we performed ourselves as mentioned, and another after Alexis refused to believe the first test and took my husband to court for child support. For a single second, this whole thing made me second guess if my husband was raped, that this could have been her way of forcing my husband to admit to an affair. But after talking with Alexis, I don't think that was the plan. Alexis says that Alice told her my husband was the father under strict confidence, demanding that she never ever tell me or my husband. We were only ever to be told if Alexis died before Alice's daughter was old enough to take care of herself, so that she wouldn't end up in foster care. The only reason Alexis came to us then, instead of keeping that secret, is because Alice's life insurance wasn't being released yet, and she was out of options. She also felt I should know my husband and her daughter had an affair. This all reaffirms in my mind that Alice did rape my husband, with the exception of getting pregnant with his child. She obviously had other partners at the time, since one of them fathered a daughter, but no one knows who. It's clear to me that Alice believed it was my husband. I did suggest Alexis upload a sample to Ancestry to see if any matches pop up, but as Alice travelled all over for work, I don't know that anything will ever come out of that. In truth, I've washed my hands of the situation. Alice did enough damage, and I don't particularly plan to be around for any more. My husband and I have gone through a lot of counselling, and will likely continue for a while. This whole situation damaged us both. My husband more obviously, and I don't think we're fully healed for a very long while. To answer a few questions. No, sadly, there isn't a hidden diary or text to explain what the fuck was going on. My husband and I are not getting divorced. He understands why I reacted the way I did and has been strong when I was weak before. I spent the past 7 months being strong while he was weak, so we're considering the whole thing even. We're still madly in love, and I plan to be together for a long time still. More on this. No, we will not be adopting Alice's child. If she had been my husband's, we would not have been adopting the child. Ultimately, I thank Reddit for setting me straight. There was a massive outpouring of support and corrective advice. To say I got a slap in the face would be a descriptive but apt way to put it. I needed it then, and I thank you for it. To say that you have saved my marriage is an understatement. I do, however, have some good news. During my leave of absence, while my husband and I rediscovered what makes us love each other the most, I got pregnant. We're expecting our first baby, a girl, in a little over 3 months, and my husband and I are ecstatic. And no, we will not be naming her after my dead ex-best friend. Wow. There was many comments after this one talking about like what a roller coaster of a scenario that is. People saying that they wouldn't be able to move on with OP after the way that she didn't believe him initially. I have to say, from my point of view, I'm glad that they were able to find their way back to each other through all this. Even though the initial reaction was shitty, I'm glad that they were able to come through this together. There's just so much going on. OP's best friend and the cancer and the grief and then what husband's got through, I can't imagine how he's feeling in this and then carrying, that trauma silently for so long. And I have to say, I'm glad that the DNA test did provide that clarity, even though the whole situation is just still like a mindfuck. And the pregnancy news being a little bright light in all this darkness that happened. I imagine that there's worries that, when baby comes around, it could bring up some stuff, and I hope that they continue to seek professional help for that kind of thing as well. But now, I'm going to turn this one to you guys. Whew. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's have another story. This one's from Fantalescent, and there was no update to this one, but it's titled, I, 23 female, made travel plans without my boyfriend. 25 male of about a year. Now it seems like he's going to resent me forever. Hi relationships, thanks in advance for the help. Here goes the story. I'm a 23-year-old first year medical student, and I've been with my boyfriend, a 25-year-old software developer / student, for about a year. We met on Tinder, took it slow, fell in love. About 3 months ago, his 3-year-old son moved in with him. We don't live together, but we live very close to each other and spend a good amount of time together given our busy schedules. The transition of his son being a part of our lives has not been easy. If you look in my post history, you'll find that story, but it's been getting so much better, and I really enjoy the kid now. The two of us work together so well, and we love each other a lot. Here's where the issue comes in. Being a first year medical student, this upcoming summer is going to be my last time off. I get 3 weeks. For the next several years. Plus, since I'm a medical student, I'm living off of loans and I'm broke as fuck. So I'm looking at my summer. I decided now would be a good time to take a vacation. I started looking at flights, and since I'd been to Asia just a year ago and hadn't been to Europe, I looked at flights to Europe. After some searching, the cheapest flights to countries where I could afford a vacation were to Munich. I price tracked for a week and saw that prices were going up, so I moved on it and bought my plane tickets. They were reasonably priced, and in the timeline I could swing given my summer research obligations. My boyfriend was out of town at the time when I bought the tickets and was preoccupied on his trip. So I figured that we'd talk about it when he returned, and that if he could/wanted to go with me, he could buy a ticket as well. I would have loved for him to go with me, but I enjoy traveling alone as well, so I didn't think it was a big deal. Besides, if I had waited to buy tickets until we figured out if he could get time off work and watch his son, prices would have likely increased to a level that would be unaffordable for me. When he found out, he was pissed. Pissed that I hadn't waited for him. He said it was a selfish thing to do. He said it made him feel like I didn't really want him to go with me. I recognized here that I was wrong. I tend really independent and I know he prefers doing things together. And while I know neither way is necessarily better, I should have considered his feelings. I really feel badly that I didn't consider that, and I've apologized several times to him. Since then, it's become apparent that he will not be able to go with me to Germany due to his own financial constraints. I thought things were fine between us, but yesterday when I accidentally reminded him of my trip, I say accidentally because I wasn't trying to taunt him or anything, I just want to clear up some logistics. He proceeded to be upset the whole rest of the day through today. When he's upset, he withdraws entirely and becomes really distant. But just to me. With his son and everyone else, he's fine. The anger is entirely directed towards me. Now it comes out that he's still upset because now I'm going and he's not. Plus apparently Germany is a place he's always wanted to go, and now if we go together in the future, it's ruined now because I'll have gone there without him. It seems like he's going to be upset at me for a while and likely the whole time I'm in Germany. I don't really know what else to do. I can't not go. I already bought my ticket and this is going to be my last chance at a vacation for a while. But I've apologized at length, really genuinely. And I don't think it's fair for him to treat me like I'm on probation still. Any thoughts help. Darth Boggle says to this one, OP, I'm really having trouble understanding why you didn't talk to your boyfriend at all about your vacation plans until after you ordered tickets. You're in a relationship with this guy and by doing that it seems like you really don't care if he goes or not. Shouldn't you want him to go if he can? You've been together for a year. Shouldn't this be at least up for a discussion before you pull the trigger? Also, you mentioned how broke you are, so I'm having trouble understanding how your vacation includes a plane flight. You also mentioned how broke your boyfriend is. Wouldn't the best scenario have been to talk about this trip with him first to see his ideas, and maybe you both could have picked something cheap you both wanted? Sorry OP, but it sounds like you're being really inconsiderate of your boyfriend's feelings here. I know if my girlfriend told me she bought tickets to fly to Europe this summer without even talking about it with me, I'd be super pissed. Heartbreaker says, also she said that she didn't want to wait because her tickets would be more expensive, but she was okay with letting her SO wait, knowing they would cost more and that he was broke. It's almost like she didn't want him to go. If I'm being completely honest, when I first came into this, I was like, oh yeah, just go for it. But then the more I did think about it in those comments, they felt pretty spot on at the same time. I fail to believe that you can't just send a simple message or a quick chat at some point. Hey, thinking about going to Germany this summer. What do you think kind of thing? Needs to be acted on quickly. Just communication. Because I think if I was like in the boyfriend's position and, partner comes up to you and says, oh, I'm going to Germany this summer, I'd be like, oh, okay, cheers. But at the same time, the way he's dealing with it as well, the silent treatment, all this kind of stuff whenever it gets brought up, it just feels like simple communication could have solved this very easily. But at the same time, I'm thinking about it, is there possibly more in the background of this? Is it one of those stories where it's, it's not about the Germany trip? But what do you guys make of this situation? Put yourself in OP's shoes, the boyfriend's shoes. How would you feel in those scenarios? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories. Your love, your support, your time, it always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being involved. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.